I'm Richard Broida. Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I am the Azure Application Development Director at Bennett Adelson, and this talk is going to be about finding code vulnerabilities with DevSecOps in Azure. That's a big mouthful. I'm going to repeat what was said earlier if you came in a little late. You're welcome to put questions and comments into the chat window as I'm talking. It's rather unlikely that I'll be able to respond to any of that during the presentation, but we will follow up with you if you leave us some contact information in your comment. So please encourage you to do that. Now, the subject today is I'm going to explain what the concept of DevSecOps is. I am a long-standing advocate of the DevOps idea and the use of Azure DevOps Service to achieve that in your particular organization. DevSecOps simply means adding awareness of security to that. I'm going to explain the role of vulnerability scanning in a DevSecOps process, and then I'm going to do actually one demo with two parts where I'm going to show how to add quickly and easily the ability to scan your code and also scan whatever open source libraries you're including with your code for known or suspected vulnerabilities using some simple tools that fit into your Azure pipelines. So this is a variation on a slide that should look familiar to most of you if you know anything about DevOps. The original idea of DevOps was that we take the agile processes that our development teams, and that includes the testing QA people and the business analyst type people who developed a nice iterative cyclical system for delivering high quality software quickly. And let's include the operations people in this same process so that when we go to deploy applications, configure them, monitor them, that can be part of the same iterative process that we're following in the development side of things. And the feedback, the results we get from deploying, managing, and monitoring gets fed in and helps us with planning and further development. DevSecOps says, let's go one step further and let's bring security into the picture. Let's get the security team of our organization, assuming we have one, or if we don't, let's put security features in anyway, so that we can, in addition to making our software high quality and delivering it fast, let's make sure it's secure too. Now, do we need to be secure? Well, that may depend on who you are, where you are, and who you're dealing with. So in some cases, your organization may be required by law to have to meet certain security requirements. For instance, if you're in the medical field, you have to comply with HIPAA. Or you might be working in a business or an industry where there are standard requirements, such as the credit card processing industry requires you to comply with PCI. Or your customer might have standards. Many institutions have their own minimum security standards, which they publish, which you have to follow if you want to develop software for them, whether you're working in-house or if you're outside. So it's very likely, and also obviously being insecure is not good for business in general. What do you need to do to make your software secure? And this talk is only going to focus on one particular thing, but if you've studied anything about security, or if you're following any sort of conscious security program in your organization, you already know that you need to do all of these things, or at least the major ones. If you're really concerned, you may or may not want to hire outside inspectors and penetration testers, but you should be following good coding practices, you should be running on a secure platform, and you should be constantly monitoring to look for threats and suspicious behavior. The additional step, which I'm going to talk about, is to add security analysis tools to your DevSecOps process. And when we do that, we get several benefits. One is these tools that I'm going to talk about know about the standards that are out there for measuring and evaluating the security fitness of your software. There's and this is just a partial list of the standards out there that tools can bring to play to your organization. The common weakness enumeration is a giant list of all different kinds of vulnerabilities that have been reported and analyzed by the security community. It's kept very up to date. The common vulnerabilities and exposures list is a list of specific software products and libraries that are known to have vulnerabilities. You don't want your software getting on that list. But furthermore, you don't want to accidentally use any products or libraries that are known to have vulnerabilities. And finally, CVSS is a scoring system that can rank vulnerabilities once they're discovered on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst. So if you use these tools, as I said, you'll have tools that are aware of these standards and can apply them to your application. The good tools will work not only with the code you're compiling, which would be your .NET code if you're doing .NET projects, but also uncompiled code. So it would include JavaScript, HTML, even configuration files. Can give you scores. And then a very important point is that most of these tools can also generate reports, so that you're not just sharing this information amongst your developers or even within IT. You can distribute nice looking informative reports to your management, to your customers, to your auditors and regulators. Okay, in this demo, I'm going to show you how to get started. I'm a big believer when you're talking about DevOps or DevSecOps and you're saying how can I adopt these practices into my software development organization. It's good to do it gradually. It's good to take small steps that you can perform, test, evaluate, and then repeat and expand. So this is going to show you how easy it is to get started using a couple of extremely popular tools. One is called Sonar Cloud, which is part of the Sonar Source product suite. Sonar Cloud is a pretty big deal, and I'm going to just show you a little bit of what it can do in this demo, but it's very easy to get started. And then White Source Bolt is a tool that analyzes the open source libraries and components that you're including in your app, and it looks at them for security problems and also for licensing issues. There's another question that managers often throw at you is, how do we license this software? Is it okay to use open source? Now, I'm not here to endorse these particular products. There are others besides these that you can choose from, and I encourage everyone to go do a little research, do a little experimenting and investigating to see if these tools are right for you or if others might be better. But this is a place where you can get started. So now I'm going to have to reshare my screen, if you'll excuse me for a moment. Just here, got to share my desktop now so I can go into my browser. Here we are. Okay, so this is a project that I've set up in Azure DevOps in my own personal Azure DevOps organization. It's a very sparse little project, just to keep things simple. All I have in here is I have a Git repository where I've got a plain vanilla ASP.NET MVC project. Happens to be a .NET Core project. It could be any kind of project, but I'm just going to use this for a simple example. And then I've got a couple of pipelines. These are just build pipelines. They don't do any release and deployment work. Again, that's just to keep the demo a little simpler. Now I've got two here. The first one is a demo that I've already completed and worked out. So if I run out of time, I can just show you that. I'm going to attempt in the time I've got to fix this one so that it will use the tools I mentioned. Right now, if we look at it, it's just doing the bare bones. It goes and sets up the NuGet packages, and then it runs VS build, and that does the actual build, and that's it. There's obviously more that I would have in a real pipeline, but this is just a simple minimal example. If you're not, just a moment, my phone is ringing and it's interrupting my presentation. Goodbye, phone. Okay. If you're not familiar with how this looks, this is a YAML file. This is the new format that Microsoft has introduced. Sooner or later, everything is going to be in YAML, I predict. It's not that hard to understand. If you're unfamiliar with this, just think of it as JSON without the curly braces. Okay, now, in order to use the free open source security scanning tools that we're going to talk about, I need to first add them to my organization that I've set up in Azure DevOps. And I do that by going up here. First of all, if you click on this button here, this shows us the extensions or the plugins that we've added to our organization. And here they are, one for Sonar Cloud and one for White Source. The way I get these is I go into the marketplace and go searching. And this is, won't go through the whole process, but this is how you go and find them. Click on one of these, it'll take you to a page where you can install it. Okay, so I've already done that. Now there's an additional step I need to take for one of these, for the, back into the project here. For the, in the individual project, if I want to use Sonar Cloud, I have to set up a connection with the Sonar Cloud service. Sonar Cloud is its own thing. This is the Sonar Cloud portal, and this is the back up here. Here's the home page of it. But I need to go in here and generate a security token, which is easy to do. You just give a token a name here and say generate, and it'll give you a little string of gibberish. I need to copy it right here and now, because if I don't, it'll disappear. You see all these others I've created. They've all got names, but I don't get to see what the actual key is. This is so that the key will be hidden, and we'll be able to establish a secure, trusted relationship between Azure DevOps and Sonar Cloud without anybody seeing the security key. So I've done that by going into my project settings, and down under pipelines, there's a place for service connections. And this is a service endpoint that I've created. If you want to look at how I created it, it looks just like this. I paste into here that security key that I just showed you how to create, and then I give it a name. Once I say OK, it'll go ahead and register the endpoint. I'm going to need that in order to complete the exercise. But having done all that, let's go back to the pipeline. And now I'm ready to edit the pipeline and put these tools to work. I'm going to start by putting the white bolt component in first. And let's see, I want it down here. I'm going to make it the last thing that the pipeline does. I just click on it. I have an option here to tell it what directories to scan in. I'm going to leave that blank so that it scans everything. And just down here, it now, because it was looking for the directory input, I didn't put one in, so I need to take that out. And that's all I need to do to set up a white bolt scan in my build pipeline. Setting up Sonar Cloud takes a little more, because I need to put 3 steps in here, and they need to be placed in the right order. So this is a little bit more involved, but not much. I'm going to take myself up to just before the build step, after the NuGet steps and before the build step, and go looking for Sonar Cloud tasks. And the first one I need is this one, prepare analysis configuration. This is the only step that's actually kind of complicated, because this is where I'm going to tell this pipeline how to connect to the Sonar Cloud service. Most of the work is already done for me, because I've already created this service endpoint. That'll allow Sonar Cloud to trust the operation of this pipeline. And then it's actually gone in and talked to Sonar Cloud and said, let's find your organization. I should explain it. An organization in Sonar Cloud is kind of like an organization in Azure DevOps. It's a collection of projects. Then I've got this one that I've created. Yes, I want to integrate with MS Build. Project key and project name will identify this particular pipeline's products inside of my Sonar Cloud organization. I can make up any name here I want. So I'll just call it our Broida DevSecOps demo. That's fine. And project name can be anything. I'm going to just give it the same name for convenience. And that should be it. Okay, so now you see all that stuff I filled out over there is now registered here as inputs to the task. Once I've completed the build, I'm then going to run the actual analysis that Sonar Cloud does. So I go down to the run code analysis step, throw that in. There are no inputs to it. It's already been configured with this previous step up here. Then the last thing is I want to publish the results. That's how we'll get to see them when we're done. So I'm going to say publish the result, and I have a parameter here for a timeout, 300 seconds. That's okay. So I'm going to throw that here. And now I'm done. Okay, once I save this, it's going to trigger a build, because I have, if you look at the top here, the trigger is any change to the master branch of my repository. And since the build definition itself in this YAML file is being saved in source control, you can see it's in a file called Azure Pipelines 3 YAML. That's going to trigger a new build. And sure enough, there is a build underway right here. So let's go see if we can take a look at it. Now, this is the part of the demo where I cross my fingers a little bit, because I have to wait for Microsoft to give me a build agent to run this on. It looks like they found one right away. That's good, which means I have a chance of getting this done on time. I'm not paying for my own personal parallel pipelines and private build agents, so I've got to wait for whatever Microsoft gives me. But we're underway, and you can watch the output here on the right as it goes through each of these steps. Let me, I'll come back to this, but let me show you the result so I don't use up everybody's time watching it. I'm going to go back and look at the other pipeline that I previously created. Okay, this one has run several times, and if I go in here and look at the results of the most recent run, it ran this morning, I can see a couple of things. First is, over here, there's a new tab with the white source bolt report, and it's telling me that I have a vulnerability score of medium, which is okay, but not great. And down here, it's showing me what the sources of this problem are. I'm using 2 jQuery libraries that have known issues. And if I want, it can give me a detailed explanation of what the issue is, and it gives me a suggested fix. And often the suggested fix is upgrade to a newer version, which won't have the vulnerabilities. Now, again, this project I'm analyzing was built in Visual Studio just using the default template. So this is what you get out of the box. But this gives me at least a baseline. I can say, all right, even if I don't decide to go in and fix these vulnerabilities right now, I know what the vulnerabilities are right now. Furthermore, I should be, if I can remember where it is, there's a link here to publish this as a report. And I'm not seeing where it is, so I'm going to ask you to take my word for it. I can turn this into and output this into a report that I can then print or send as an email to somebody else. So that's the white source report, what that looks like. Let me see if my other build is done yet. Not, still running, okay. Then we also can look at the output from SonarCloud. Now, SonarCloud doesn't display its report in the browser. Instead, it gives you a link. Well, it tells me that it passed. That's good. It gives me a link, and this takes me into the SonarCloud portal, which is actually where I was just now. And this is the report for that particular run of that particular pipeline. And you'll notice first that it's showing me a number of things. Security is one of them. It's saying it didn't find any security vulnerabilities, which is good to know. It did find some other issues. It found 12 bugs or reliability issues, and it found some code duplication issues down here. If I want to see what these issues are, I can click here, or I could have just gone straight into this tab by clicking up here. This is where the tab is. And this is where I get to see each and every one of the issues that SonarCloud identified in that particular scan of my project. Some of this is stuff you'll be familiar with seeing if you've used any kind of an editing tool in Visual Studio. Some of these are suggested. You can see they have ranks in terms of how vulnerable. There's one here that's ranked as critical, and it says here, remove this unread private field logger or refactor the code to use its value. Again, this project was just created from the Visual Studio template, so I don't have any extra special things going on in here. Okay, let me again go back and look at the previous run that I started, and it's now done. So what we would have seen if we had watched the log here. Let me find where we go to the log. Okay, here we go. So this is what we would see if we looked at the steps. Here in the SonarCloud preparation, all it really did was set up the connection to SonarCloud. In the SonarCloud analysis, though, we get a blow-by-blow listing of all the things that it did. And this is particularly important if there is an error, if something went wrong during the during this process. I'll be able to see it here and hopefully be able to diagnose it. Then again, the publishing step, which happens pretty quick if everything else went okay. And then here's the white source log output as well. Okay, so again, these tools give us the ability to see where we are at the very beginning. They will run every single time that I execute the pipeline. If I don't want it to run every single time I execute the pipeline, I can go in and I can edit the definition by adding some parameters, which I won't do in this demo, but I can. Hey, where am I here? Here we go. I can put conditions on these tasks. Let's say that I'm operating a source control system where individual developers develop in separate branches. And when you check into a separate branch, you don't want to, you may trigger a build, but you don't want all this analysis stuff to run because you might be experimenting, you might be putting results out into the logs that aren't really relevant because they don't represent your final work. So you can change the inputs here, add inputs to here so that it will check to see why is this build running, and you can have it check to see is the build running because you've merged your personal development branch into the main branch or the master branch, and only then when we're merging into master, then we'll run this analysis so that we can tell that we're not putting insecure code into the master branch. You can also configure these things so that they will stop the build if you don't get a high enough score. Remember, both SonarCloud and White Source give you an overall result. Either in SonarCloud, it's just pass or fail. You can edit in SonarCloud what the conditions are for passing, and you can also edit in I believe in White Source. But in any event, you can say you must pass or else you don't merge. You can also say you must have at least a medium, or maybe you want to put a low threshold score in White Source, or else you don't merge. So these are incremental changes and improvements you can make to the process as you go along, and if you're satisfied that using these tools is really beneficial. So that's the end of my demo. I guess I have time to ask Tim if anyone has put any questions in the chat to let us know. Let me know. Tim, are you there?
Richard, there are two questions. One is, can SonarCloud be used in Azure DevOps Server 2019?
And the answer is yes. The process, as I understand it, should be very similar. The thing to keep in mind about DevOps Server 2019 is that it's usually 1 or 2 quarters behind where things are in the Azure DevOps experience. So assuming that it's as up to date enough, and I think it should be, if you've got the latest version of it, then yes. So everything I'm showing you here should work in on-premise in the Azure DevOps Server.
And there's one more question, Richard. My code has intellectual property calculations in it. Can I trust SonarCloud that they are not stealing my code?
That is a question I think you're going to have to take up with maybe with SonarCloud. That I don't have a quick answer for you for that. And again, I'm not here as a SonarCloud salesman. That's worth investigating. You can, if you need to, exclude that part of code from the SonarCloud analysis. I will say that SonarCloud, just like Azure DevOps itself, has access restrictions, so that I'm the owner of this particular SonarCloud organization. I have to invite people to let them in if I want to let other people look at it. So you can isolate access to your organization's people, but that still could mean that a copy of your code is visible inside of SonarCloud, and that could be a problem. So yeah, that's something worth checking out. Okay, that's my time. Those were both good questions. Now we're going to take a 15-minute break. And when we come back from that break, another fine presenter, who happens to be me, is going to present rapid Kubernetes development with Azure Dev Spaces.